Well, greetings, this is Trev from onlinepclearning.com. This is our third tutorial in the expense calculator. Just a little application that takes our information from a form here. We add the information in here, it then adds it to the database, and then we calculate all the various breakdowns on our front sheet. It's dynamic, and we're showing you how to make this. Well, where did we get up to? Well, let's have a look. Well, in our previous tutorial, we were able to get to the point where we put our two sheets on. We'd been able to establish a user form that come up, and now simply what we want to do is when we put our information into the user form and push our add button, we want to take that information, take it over to the database sheet, and if there was information in here, for instance, what we want to do, I'll just scroll that over. If there's information in here, we want to be able to find the next cell down here and drop our data in across here. Of course, it wouldn't be dates. So you're getting the idea of what we're trying to do here. Okay. All right, well, let's get going. How do we do that? So just to repeat that, we want to take the information from the user form, from these 5 fields in the user form. We want to then add them by this add button, and we want to drop them down here, one under the other, all the way down here and all the way across. Well, the first thing we want to do is go to our user form, to our VBA editor, so we'll push Alt F11, and here we see our data entry user form. Let's double click that. Here's our data entry user form. Here's our 5 fields, 3 text fields, 1, 2 and 3, and 2 combo fields. Now you remember we called this TXT date, we called this CBO store, CBO category, TXT amount, and TXT comments. Over here we have our 4 command buttons called CMD. I'll just have a look at what we call that. We call that CMD add data, CMD refresh, and CMD view, and CMD close. Now we're going to need all those names for our coding. Alright, let's first of all get in and start by working out how we're going to put that data over from the user form onto that database sheet. So where we see our command button, CMD add data, let's double click that, and that takes us through to the piece of code for that. The first thing we want to do is we want to set up 2 variables, and I'll put the dimensions in for these variables first. First is going to be a variable for our worksheet. Now you'll notice the IntelliSense comes up as we're working here with the VBA editor, and you'll also notice that if we've typed it correctly, it will change to the proper case. So we're just dimming or putting in the dimensions for the 2 variables that we have. You can click here if you wish. Okay, alright, so what are our 2 variables? Well, the first one is for our worksheet, because we're going to refer to it many times here. So to do that, we want to make sure that we only have to do that with a variable, which is a piece of code that will repeat itself and refer to the same thing. So we're going to be putting information into this sheet here, sheet 2. So our variable is going to be set WS equals sheet 2. It's as simple as that. Right, our second variable is going to be set, and this is the one that's going to do the work. So first of all, what have we done? We've set a variable that says set add2 is the name of the variable, and it's first of all referencing sheet 2, and then it's .range. We want to go all the way down and come up to find the next empty cell. So we're going to put in here all the way to the bottom. So we'll type our dot and we'll push end because we want to go to the end. Double click end, open parenthesis for our arguments and XL up, close parenthesis. We want to offset at 1. We don't want to put it over the top of the piece of data that's there. We want to go down 1, so we're going to go dot offset. And when you type in offset or OF, you'll see offset comes in here. Open brackets for our argument again. We want to go down 1 row, over 0 columns, and close. And there's our variable. So if we were to run that piece of code there, what would it do for us? Well, I'll minimize this VBA editor screen. What it would do, it would take the information, or it would actually go to our database sheet here. It would go all the way down here while there's data. If there was data in here, let's put some in. If there's data in there, it's going to go all the way to the bottom. It's going to find that sheet, so it goes down and then back up and finds that reference and then offsets it 1. That's what the piece of code does today. All right, we'll take that information out. Let's go back to our editor. All right, so what do we do now? Well, now what we do is quite simple. We just put in the names of those fields referencing this information. So we go add to, which is our variable, equals text date dot value. That's our first one. So what that is going to do is take the information from text date in our user form and put it into that cell. The next one is going to be add to, and this time we want to offset over 1 column. Well, that's easy, so we just hit our button here, our dot offset. What do we want to do? Just go a column, so it'll be 0 for rows and 1 for a column. Dot value, so we want the value of that cell to equal what? Well, we want it to equal our next field, which was CBO store. Dot value. I've just typed that wrong, hang on. Dot value. Okay, yeah, there it is. So we're offsetting 1 and it's going to equal the CBO store dot value. All right, we'll go to our next one. What we can actually do here to make this a little bit quicker, we'll copy this piece of code and we'll repeat it 3 more times. Okay, so now think about this. What we're going to do, we've offset 1 column for that information. We'll change the information over here. The next one was CBO category, if you remember. Category. The next one down was the text amount, which was TXT amount. And that should change to uppercase, yes. Okay, and the last one was TXT comments for our description. And again, that should change. All right, so we don't want them all in that 1 column. We want to move them over 1 column at a time. So we'll change that to 2, that to 3, and that to 4. And so that we know we don't want to actually go over to the sheet and do this work. We want to be able to stay on the user form, have the user form stay on the entry sheet, and just have this happen without referencing or without selecting the cells. So to do that, we're going to put in a with statement. So we're just going to go with WS or with worksheet 2, and then at the end of this block we're going to put end with. Hit our enter. Okay, the next thing we want to do is put the values in we want to clear all the values in the form. So we're going to grab this bit of information here. So here you can see I've referenced all of the controls on that user form, and we want to actually set their values to 0. So how are we going to do that? We're going to put equal and then double quotes, which means equals nothing. It doesn't mean 0, it means equals nothing. Okay, so we'll put those in. With the date one, we'll just leave that out for a moment because we want to do something different with the date. We want to set it to a format. Okay, so with our date one, we'll go equals format, open bracket, and now you see our arguments come up. Well, the expression we want to put in is date, comma, and what do we want to format it as? See, it says asking us there to format it. Well, we want to format it as a medium date. Close brackets. Okay. All right. There we go. Now, just want to add another piece of code. That's actually going to do the job, all that we need it to do. That will work if we now go over and push that across. But there's a couple of things we need to do first. Okay, first of all, we're going to go up here. You see, we're now putting in code for the CMD Add Data button. Just go down here and click and scroll down until you find User Form. And then over to the right here, click Initialize. So we want to put a little bit of information in our Initialize section of the user form. Alright, so what do we want to put in here? Well, the first thing we want to do when the form initializes is we want to set that text box value to a date, and we want it to be today's date with a certain format. So we're going to paste that in there, and then we want to set the focus. So we'll just put in me, which says user form basically, and we want it to be CBO store, and then we go dot set focus. Now what does that mean? I've typed that wrong, CBO store. Dot set focus. Alright, so here is set focus, we'll double click that. So what that's going to do is when the user form initializes, this is the initialize event for the user form, so go into the text box and put in the format and today's date, and it's going to then move down to the CBO store value. Two more things we need to do just quickly here, or a couple of more things. First of all, we want to go to a user form. So go over here to data entry, double click that, a user form comes up. Into the store box here, click into there, and over in the properties box, and if your properties box isn't there, right click and click properties. Scroll down until you find what is called row source. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit here, and I'll scroll down till we find our row source. Here it is here, row source, and I've put it in already, store. So what we would do there, yours will be blank when you see it, and you type in store. That's the named range that we want to be in that drop down box. When we go to CBO category, you'll find when we scroll down it'll say category. You'd need, yours will be blank, and so you type in category. Category. Now what that does is put that named range into the combo box. Okay, we can also add the code in for view data. So we'll double click that. What do we want to view data? We just simply want to go to the database sheet. So first of all we'll close the user form, which is just unload me. After we unload the user form, we will then, sheet 2, is it sheet 2? Yes, is our database, dot select, and you could just put in here range. I'll type in sheet 2 again to give it a full reference. Sheet 2 dot range, and we'll go to cell A1. And you might want to unprotect that cell if you were protecting this sheet. And we want to select that cell, yes. Okay, there it is. Our next information, or piece of information, let's go back to the user form, and we can't put in the refresh one yet because we haven't set up the pivot chart and pivot table, but we'll do that in our next tutorial. We'll now put in the close button. It's just simply unload me. Right, well, if we've done our job right, and we go back here to our user form, pull it up and start entering data, yes, it's come up with today's date. It should have all the values in here. Let's put in a value there for coals, and let's put in a category for kitchen, and an amount of 234, and a description, we'll just call it items. And we're going to add that to the database. We're getting a debug error. Why is that? Let's see. Okay. Now the reason why we're getting a debug error, and you notice I'm doing all this on the fly, is I haven't referenced the column where we want to start, which is column C. So we'll just go run, reset. We'll go back and try it again and see if I get it right the second time. And go Coles, and it was kitchen, wasn't it? And there's our amount, and we called it item. And we'll add our data. It's in. Let's put another piece of data in there. We'll call this super cheap, roof, and the amount, and we'll call it roof. Add data. Well, let's go and have a look at our data. We should be able to do that by clicking the View Data button. There it is, and there's our two items dropped very neatly into there for us. Right, I just changed the formatting of that cell back to currency. Alright, so our user form is working fine. We got pop up the user form, the Add Data button works, and the View Data button works, and the Close button for the user form works. In our next tutorial we'll drop in the pivot chart, and away we go. We'll be all finished. This is Trev. Thanks for listening. I hope you were able to follow that. All this code will be up on the website, on the blog. Thank you again.